This is the horrific story of Stephen and Katie Pladl. The story actually starts in 1995 when Stephen Pladl met a girl named Alyssa Garcia on the internet, and at the time, Stephen was 20 years old and Alyssa was 15 years old. This is a more recent picture of Alyssa, but at the time he groomed Alyssa and the two started a romantic relationship. Eventually, he was able to coerce Alyssa to moving from her home in San Antonio, Texas, to his home up in New York. This is a classic case of domestic violence when an abuser will isolate their victim, remove them from all of their familiar surroundings, their friends, and their family, and make sure that they control every aspect of their lives. When Alyssa was only 17, she gave birth to the couple's first child, a baby who they named Denise. I have to be careful about the details in regards to how he treated Denise, but it was very poor. He abused Denise. He pinched her, leaving her with bruises all over her body anytime that she would cry. He even locked her in a cooler when she would cry, and then only let her out when she was barely on the verge of suffocating. Alyssa knew that she could not just leave Stephen. He made various threats to her, explicitly saying what he would do if she tried to leave, and so she knew that the only way she could protect Denise was to give her up for adoption, so that is what she did. Baby Denise was adopted by Kelly and Anthony Fusco. They changed her name from Denise to Katie and raised her until she was 18. But when Katie was a senior in high school, she became curious about her biological parents, and so she found them on social media, and they agreed to meet up and get to know each other. Right before Katie was supposed to go off to college, she changed all of her plans and moved down to Virginia to be with her biological parents. At the time, Stephen and Alyssa were still together, and they had 2 daughters of their own, and Stephen and Alyssa were not doing well, and they decided to separate. Katie moved into their house, and while Stephen and Alyssa were sleeping in separate bedrooms, at night, Stephen would sneak into Katie's room and start sleeping on her floor. Over time, he continued to push the boundary with Katie. He groomed her, and the two started a romantic relationship. Alyssa found out about this and filed for divorce, and the two divorced 2 months after the divorce was final. Stephen and Katie got married, and that is her adoptive parents right here, Anthony and Kelly, and then that over there is Stephen's mom, Grace. So just so that we're all clear, Grace went from being Katie's grandma to her mother-in-law, and her adoptive parents stood by and allowed this to happen because they felt like since she was an adult at the time, they didn't have any control over her, and if they were to disagree, then they would lose Katie. Then Katie had a little baby boy named Bennett with her own dad. When Alyssa found out about this, she alerted the authorities because this is obviously a case of incest, which is against the law. So they opened an investigation and they arrested Stephen and Katie. They took baby Bennett away and gave custody to Stephen's mom, Grace. After the arrest, Katie called Stephen and told him that they were done. She didn't want to be with him anymore and she wanted to end it. Stephen did not handle this very well, so he went to his mom's house to get baby Bennett. I'm not going to say on TikTok what he did to baby Bennett, but he then went to Connecticut where he knew Katie was staying with her adoptive parents. He stalked them and waited for them to take this route that he knew they would take to go visit Anthony's parents. And once they came to a stop sign, he walked up to their car and used an arrow-type assault rifle on Katie and her adoptive father, Anthony. He then called his mom, told him what he had done, and then went and parked his car and did the same thing to himself. 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence in their lifetime, and the risk of domestic violence only increases when the partner tries to leave their abuser. That is why it's so important to speak up against domestic violence, to not stand for it, and to definitely not make jokes about it. To hear more about the Pladl family and their entire story, you can listen to the most recent episode of Mama Mystery wherever you get your podcasts.